Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 37th episode of the PP Political Podcast. I'm Eshan Pokhrel,
My name is Cameron Cummings.
and today we're talking about the massive bank failures over in California, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. We're going to just talk through what happened, why this matters to the whole country, obviously, and the world, and where we go. And for disclaimers, obviously, this is not financial advice, and we are not promoting any type of money things because we can get a lot of trouble for that. So without further ado, Cam, can you just start us off?
Yeah. So over the past few weeks, two major banks have been taken over by U.S. regulators, as well as a few smaller ones. But we're talking about the big two: Silicon Valley Bank, which is the 16th largest bank in the United States, holding around $209 billion in assets, which was reported at the end of last year. And also due to like the rate hikes and on the U.S. Treasury bonds, Silicon Valley Bank lost $1.8 billion. The thing about Silicon Valley Bank is it was mainly tech startups out in California and across the country. So that was like its big staple, like, oh yeah, we're a bank, but we're for startups and primarily tech startups. So it was really finally looked at by most people. And obviously over the pandemic, tech was absolutely blowing up, which blew up Silicon Valley Bank to new heights. Then they thought, hey, let's put all our money, well, not all our money, but a good portion of money into bonds, which is a safe bet. And like I said, with the rate hikes on bonds, Silicon Valley Bank lost $1.8 billion. So honestly, just a quick timeline of events of a few things that happened leading up to it. On March 9th, Silicon Valley Bank, which we will now just call SVB, which most people just call it, shares started tanking as the company announced it would be raising capital by selling its stock. And normally when a company starts selling stock, especially a bank, that's not a good thing in the slightest. When a bank starts selling stock or anything that you have your money in, any sort of like personal asset, not personal, but like, yeah, I'll say that personal asset or anything, um, kind of like the housing market, that's when people start getting nervous. And like I said, they just started all running in and pulling out their money at once. Following this announcement, some venture capital firms began advising startup companies to pull money out of SVB and start diversifying it and spreading about across different other banks because the government will insure up to $250,000 of money lost by a bank. After that, you're banking on a legal system. Hopefully, you can get the money back. And in a lot of cases, you don't, which is why you see some people, which isn't normally recommended, spread $200,000 here, $225,000 here, 240,000 here to like different banks. So if any of them collapsed, the government will come in and give that money back to them. So venture capital firms invest in small businesses and startup companies that they believe have growth potential. So these small businesses looked at them and took what they said very seriously. So that's why they just instantly jumped in and started pulling all their money out of SVB. And customers were having difficulty wiring funds at SVB. It was kind of stated that they were trying to like slow it down so people wouldn't just rush in to pull their money, where they were allowed to, but they made it more difficult and slowed down the process. So hopefully it would deter people from coming in and pulling out all their money. And also on Friday, March 10th, so literally the next day right after that, SVB was closed down by regulators from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, who plan to reopen it Monday under their control. The FDIC attempted to auction off SVB's assets, concluding the bidding on Sunday in hopes to settle the markets on Monday morning, and no sale was made. So now we're going to get into a little bit I know about several tech CEOs, such as Gary Tan, who is a white combinator, and Henry, I'm about to butcher their names, Henrique Dubagras?
Yeah, Henri
Dubagras?
Dubra
Huh?
of Brex, CEO of Brex. But yeah,
Yeah. They stepped in to make their voices heard. Mr. Tan created a petition and called on Congress to get involved. While Mr. Still gonna butcher his name, Eshan come in,
Dubois.
Dubagras, thank you, worked on raising over $1 billion to help fund an emergency credit line to allow startups banking with SEB to make payroll for next week. So as soon as it started hitting people's payrolls and they couldn't make it, This is where it kind of transitioned out of SVB, and all the companies were like, we really screwed up, and they screwed up. It is really nothing that startups could have done. Banking really isn't in the startups' power. So I guess, Eshan, if you want to take over for the next few things along this timeline.
Yeah. So everything he said so far could be very boring. Honestly, this is a kind of a podcast where we were like, we need to talk about it. We need to try to make it interesting. So hopefully we end up doing that. But now, Saturday, March 11th, the next day, 10 days ago from today, the UK branch of SVB shut down, and about like 30% of the tech startups in the UK were affected by this. So this wasn't just an American problem. Obviously, it'll have effects around the world, and a big effect in the UK. On Sunday, March 12th, the Biden administration released a statement and guaranteed that customers of SVB would have all of their money like accessible on Monday. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and the FDIC Chairman Martin J. Gruenberg said that all customers would remain whole. So essentially, they bailed out SVB, the customers of SVB, and I think that's a pretty fair characterization of what happened. A week later, March 19th, so we fast forward a little bit to get through to where we're at today. This was Sunday. It was reported the FDIC is planning to relaunch the attempted sale of SVB, and regulators are looking up to break the bank up. And the bids are due Wednesday, which is tomorrow at the time of this recording. And for the private bank of SVB, and the private bank of SVB serves the high net worth customers of SVB. So I guess their richest customers, their best startups, all of that. And yeah, that's where we're at today. This has been a roller coaster for finance. I don't, yeah, I mean, essentially the customers were essentially bailed out. They will have their money, and I think the banking system as a whole has been shocked by this. And this also leads into Signature Bank closing, which is our next, the other bank that went downhill. Like, Cam, you can talk about that as well.
So, there's some story about down here too. So, honestly, during the because of the panic, because of SVB, customers also began withdrawing funds from Signature Bank. Signature Bank is a New York bank, commercial bank, which experienced a collapse in 2019 due to major financial setbacks and regulatory issues. People remembered this when SVB was collapsing, and is saying if they're not safe, Signature is nowhere near as safe as well, also causing Signature's collapse as well, just several days after SVB's. The bank suffered a significant loss of over $100 million from loans issued to clients in the taxi medallion market, which faced a steep decline of value with the rise of ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft. The yellow cab taxis you'll see mainly now only in New York. I cannot tell you the last time I've seen a cab. I see a few in Huntsville.
Yeah, there's some in New York. I was just in New York last week, and there were still a lot.
Yeah. But around the country as a whole, the whole yellow cab taxi or just taxi in general have been replaced by Uber and Lyft, which has taken a massive hit, and we're not going to get into the whole taxi car share market fiasco. But Signature Bank was also involved in regulatory probes, leading to additional financial penalties and a damaged reputation. And people remember that damaged reputation and pulled their money out. The Federal Reserve found the bank to have deficiencies in its anti-money laundering, or AML, compliance program, leading to consent order and necessary remedial actions. I know this is really boring. And I'm not even a finance guy, and this was not the most entertaining thing to look up, but it is something. As we're getting older and we're gonna have to start, investing and putting our money into banks to know what to look out for. So this is mainly just like a red flags, things to see, and things that if they have failed in the past. I mean, everyone's one for second chances, but when it comes to banks, there are no second chances. So also, the stock price of Signature Bank plummeted following these challenges, affecting investor confidence and overall stability of the bank. But despite the collapse, Signature Bank has been working to recover by restructuring its loan portfolio, strengthening its AML compliance program, and focusing on potential growth areas. So while the bank has shown some signs of recovery, the future of Signature Bank remains uncertain as it works to regain its former stability and reputation in the industry. with SVB, it just threw it off. It was, working towards it, but people are nervous, especially the startups that can no longer make payroll. The government's bailing them out. People are not happy about that. You know, mom and pop shops, they just have to die. I can't get medicine, but these multi-billion-dollar conglomerates and banks get bailed out every chance they get.
Yeah.
So that's upsetting a lot of people. And honestly, there's really nothing that we can do about it.
Yeah, and it's been the subject of a lot of, especially after the 2008 financial crisis, where the large banks that failed were bailed out, and President Biden's press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, repeatedly said at one of the briefings when after the March 12th announcement that this is not a bailout. But I mean, it is a bailout. I don't know how you can really say it's not.
It's 1,000%
It's definitely a bailout. President Biden was, at that point in 2008, I guess he was a vice president, or he was running for vice president with President Obama, and they had to deal with the fallout of the 2008 crisis, obviously. But on the next day, and Monday, I don't know if it was the next day, but President Biden, he called on Congress again to strengthen bank rules and blamed President Trump's deregulation of banks. It's similar to what he did about the East Palestine train derailment episode from a couple of weeks ago. We talked about that, but he did the same thing, blamed deregulation, but didn't actually provide any solutions too much. I don't know. The political fallout, it hasn't been as dramatic as I would thought it would have been. I mean, it's been Senator Elizabeth Warren has been really critical of this, as she has been. Senator Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, they've been very critical of the financial division of the country as a whole for a long time, and they've really led the charge, I feel like, in issuing criticism of SVB and Signature at this point. On the other side, the Republicans, like House Oversight Chair James Comer from Kentucky, Republican, and Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, they called Silicon Valley a woke bank, and blamed its focus on diversity and equity and inclusion initiatives on its failure. There's been a lot of political sniping. There hasn't been any solutions brought forward. So yeah, I don't know. That's just a little bit of a political spin on what's happening. And we're not going to get too far into the finance and the economics of it, because this is a political podcast. So I guess we just turn to we're going to talk about the election later, obviously, the 2024 stuff. But right now, what do you think Congress or the president or anybody can do to really give Americans faith that something will be done? Because a lot of people remember 2008, and I think that they don't remember it well, that's for sure. So what do you think that can be done to change the course of what's happening right now?
And also 2008, obviously, and how the housing market's looking currently just across the country, how no one can afford a house. And if they can, they have to make an astronomical amount of money that, it's just unaffordable now. And rent prices are also increasing, so renting is becoming more unaffordable. Really, the collapse of Signature Bank serves a reminder of the importance of risk management and also regulatory compliance in banking. And I guess if you're running for office, you're either gonna jump on the side of, because there are people that agree SVB needed to be bailed out and all these other banks needed to be bailed out. They are too big to fail, and I do believe some industries are too big to fail. But sometimes they just have to fail. It's just life. So it's either it's a fine line you have to walk if you're running for office, to either be the side of we're not going to do any more big bailouts. We're for you. We're going to make sure we can stabilize everything as much as we can, or on the side of we believe these bailouts are necessary and we're going to take the necessary steps to make sure we bail them out as little as possible.
And
besides,
the free market is supposed to dictate what fails and what succeeds, and obviously a bailout goes against that principle of free market economics. So I think that a lot of people have definitely been, and I mean, honestly, myself included, have been very critical of that aspect of this whole situation. But also, not to give full credit to the Fed here, but the Fed did, Wall Street Journal did an article yesterday the Fed did raise concerns about SVB's risk management back in 2019, so even before COVID started, in January 2019. So this is like back when everything. This is the before times, basically. The Fed issued a warning to SVB, which the ticker is on the Wall Street Journal website, down 60% today over its risk management systems. And this is according to a presentation circulated last year to employees at SVB's venture capital arm. And again, this is the Wall Street Journal's reporting. The Fed issued a matter requiring attention, which is a citation that it's not an enforcement of anything, but it's just kind of like a warning. Basically, regulators have to make sure that the problem is addressed, but I guess it's just didn't happen. And this goes a long way to show it is. This gives me a little bit more confidence, not in the Fed, but I'm saying that like at least the Fed knew and they did try. However, obviously it didn't follow up, which again brings questions. But I do want to give a little bit of credit to the Fed just for bringing this up initially. Now after that, it wasn't like this happened out of nowhere, is what I'm trying to say, and I think that's been documented a lot of times over at this point.
So I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, Silicon Valley was obviously a huge collapse, and Signature, we're not going to know what really happened for a while, but SVB is developing every day. More information is coming out with it every day. And to see how people are going to jump on it in the election, I mean, every major thing that happens right now, we're going to have to talk of how is it going to affect how people run for the next election. Pretty sure DeSantis is going to be throwing his hat in there.
Yeah, I mean, with the President Trump a couple of days, not to make this an election episode again, we're going to talk about the election, obviously, but President Trump did say he was going to get indicted soon, and this would mean that it's from Florida, which means that Ron DeSantis would actually have to extradite him. So it'd be kind of funny. It's just going to be an awkward situation for Governor DeSantis in any circumstance now. But yeah, I think what you're saying, sorry to like, I think they're going to. This is going to be the main focus now because this is like actually an issue.
Oh yeah,
the confidence, the full faith and credit of the United States is like how the banking system runs because we don't have the gold standard anymore. So it's just belief, really. Honestly, it's really belief. So how can a presidential candidate address this belief and assure Americans that moving forward we're going to be a country that has a safe financial system is one that's going to be challenging. And I don't know how I'd go about it if I was running for president. I don't know if you have any idea, but what do you think? What do you think President Biden? What do you think President Biden can do? Because he hasn't confirmed he's running, but has he? I don't think he's announced.
No, I don't think he's announced either.
Most of that.
How is he going to say?
Yeah.
How's he gonna save face before the next election? Really, I don't know. I don't know what he could do. I mean, I'm not really a big guy in like finance and bank collapses. There are some things that would probably, there are some people that probably know exactly what he could do, and his team probably knows what he needs to do. And it's just if he can, and how quickly can he do it? Because if he can not solve the issue, but at least put faith back into the people, instead of just running a whole campaign on I can, but showing them and putting faith back into them would be better going into his next election.
And I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that the election's going to come down to another one of, it's going to be the Democrats saying, do you really want President Trump if they run Biden? Which at this point, what's happening right now on the Democratic side, again, we're going to do a presidential episode soon, but they're really just kind of like crowding the field out by like not announcing if President Biden's gonna run or not, and now no one else is able to like really announce it. If you're gonna run for president, Marianne Williamson has announced she ran in 2020, but outside of that, nobody in public office right now has announced their candidacy. So it's gonna be, I don't know, it's gonna be interesting to see if they can have President Biden actually respond in a way that's strong and that his approval ratings are not good. It's not looking good. I mean, I don't know, but like, it's going to be another election. It seems like where President Biden and President Trump are just dueling over who's the lesser evil, and I don't think that that's going to inspire much credit or faith or full faith and credit in the American voters.
Yeah, I mean that's really everything that I had on, SVB, in this entire situation. If you have anything else to add, Eshan, I would love it.
We should talk a little bit about like Signature. Like we did talk about it a little bit, but like This one happened immediately after.
Yeah.
And I honestly, again, I don't want to talk too much about stuff I don't know because, again, I'm not really an expert on finance. We tried to get a couple of our financial oriented guys today, but they were all busy, unfortunately. Maybe we'll get them back on later on if this develops. But Signature, I don't. Was it also a text? It was a tech startup too, right? Like kind of like,
I want to say so.
yeah. Well, we
Not as big as SVP.
yeah. But this all happened. All of it stems from SVB because I mean, that's how SVB like collapsing is what led to Signature collapsing because people were trying to just get out. Commercial bank with private offices. Yeah, I don't know. It's a mess. My worry again, we're trying to talk about the political side more than the actual finance side because that's what you're here for. I think that messing with the full faith and credit of the U.S. to this day, especially only 15 years after 2008, doesn't bode well politically or honestly just socially for politicians in general. I think the approval of Congress is going to go down. I don't even know how low it is right now. It's going to go lower. I don't know. It's a mess. It's just a mess. Yeah, that's about honestly everything we have. Like, we didn't want to go too far into the finance because again, we're not experts, and once again, everything we're saying, none of it is financial advice. You should not act on anything we've said today, just for clarification, because you should do that now. So, yeah, Signature, SVB failed. Government came in, bailed them out. Political fallout, how's it going to affect the future? We're going to find out. Thank you for listening. If you guys like our content, give us 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Podcast. Subscribe on YouTube, like on YouTube, share with your friends. The Instagram Reels we're putting out seem to be very popular, so thank you guys for listening to those and then deciding to listen to the episode. They're doing really well, so thank you for that. And honestly, in general, just keep up. We're going to be doing some big things coming into 2024. Yeah, I don't think you'll say. Follow us at PB Political AL, all that stuff. Go to the website. Cameron, anything to add?
No. I mean, obviously, you shouldn't listen to our financial advice, but what you should do is follow PB Political and tell all your friends.
That's right. All right, without further ado, we'll be back next week. I'm Eshan Pokhrel.
My name is Cameron Cummings.
And goodbye.